Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington Charles Bishop. Welcome to episode 389, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports, for institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live, KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio multi-Hall of Famer, that is, Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. A little wet, Houston, Texas. But with that being said, we'll keep it moving. Good to have both of you gentlemen on today.
No doubt.
How's it going, Charles?
Yeah, doing well. It is finals week. Finals week is upon us. But I tell you what, we had some tremendous action this past weekend with the SWAC track and field championships here in Houston. We had baseball. It was a full weekend, Doc.
Yes, it was, and it's still a full week going on. Named certain champions are being named this time of year: softball, track and field, men's and women's, and so it'll be fascinating in terms of see what's going on. Got a couple more tournaments, couple of more championships to crown this week as well. So fascinating to see how things move forward, and we'll get into a little bit of that discussion. Mike, how you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. How you fellas doing? I came in here hot today. Came in here hot. Hey, but all's good. I echo what CB says. We got all kinds of spring stuff happening. We got track and field. We got baseball. We tournaments kicking off tomorrow. As a matter of fact, we got seedings that have been made. That all is good and all is well. We got folks that have been named to all this, all that, all world. So plenty to get into.
Yeah, you even got the softball for the SWAC starting today. And Phil getting into it. In fact, you got a couple of games in the books in terms of what's going on, in terms of what took place today. You have early scores in the SWAC with Bethune-Cookman defeating Texas Southern 6-0. You have Grambling getting their first victory in the tournament in about a decade or so, defeating FAMU 3-1. FAMU got into the tournament this past weekend. They had to play a remake up a game, and it was huge. If they won, they were in essentially, and they would jump up, oddly enough, to the third seed. If they lost, they were out. And so with the win, they jump in the third seed and they push Jackson State to the fourth seed, and Alabama A&M falls off. The crazy thing about it, they were all tied in terms of the division, but that's how the triple tiebreakers fall, and it leaves the Bulldogs outside of the tournament with FAMU in and pushing Jackson State down, which means you have Jackson State actually playing Prairie View now in terms of that matchup. Fascinating going on. Rain delay in terms of what took place there. Presenting a final score of 2-1. Watching the highlights of that game here in the first, Prairie View leading 1-0, top of the second, and see what's going on there. But we got scores live going on, so we'll see how that continues to push through in terms of those updates with that taking place there. Well, being said, let me get into some news of the day. I'm gonna start with Mike. What news of the day that has you on your mind and your interest in terms of what's taking place?
Well, you just talked about softball. So SWAC announced the softball postseason awards. So Alabama State's Kendall Duramus named Player of the Year, along Hitter of the Year, while fellow teammate Bailey Greenlee was tabbed Pitcher of the Year. Prairie View A&M University. I'll say it again, in case you didn't hear me. Prairie View A&M University's Aaron Talley was selected as Newcomer of the Year. Grambling State's Kadasia Collins took home Freshman of the Year accolades. Prairie View A&M University. I'll say it again. Prairie View A&M University's Vernon Bland was named Coach of the Year after leading Prairie View A&M to a Western Division title round out the list of individual winners. Congratulations to Coach Bland. Player of the Year, Hit of the Year, Duramus claimed League Player of the Year honors for the second consecutive season. She currently ranks second in the SWAC in on-base percentage, as 53%, really .530, while ranking first in hits, 60 hits, second in runs, 47 runs. She also ranks second in stolen bases, 43 stolen bases, and fifth in batting average, 411, and sixth in RBI, runs batted in, 33. In any league, that is all-star, all-American, all this, all sync, all world stats. And oh, by the way, what's not here is her slugging percentage, which is well over 500%. Pitcher of the Year, Greenleaf, was a dominant force inside the circle for the SWAC Eastern Division champions, Alabama State. She tallied a league-leading 19 wins with a 2.89 ERA. I'll say it again, 2.89 ERA. For you baseball aficionados, that means for every 9 innings, people had to work hard to get just under 3 runs earned. So Newcomer of the Year, Tally was one of the key highlights for the Lady Panthers softball. She ranked second in team batting, 261, 69 total in bats. So she also contributed 19 runs along with 18 hits. She amassed a slugging percentage as well of 551. That's banging the ball, y'all. So congratulations to those folks for their honors. I'll just go first. A few first teamers. Catcher Viviano Figueroa, Prairie View A&M. First baseman Benice Sanders, Alabama A&M. Second base Jada Gardner from Alabama State. Shortstop Kadasia Collins, Grambling State. Third base Serena Herberenson from Alabama A&M. Outfield Kendall Duramus, Alabama State, and Jania Davis, FAMU, and Michaela Arvis from FAMU. Pitchers Bailey Greenlee from Alabama State, Hanley Gonzalez from Bethune, Kaylee Massey from Prairie View A&M, and Madison Myers, Alabama State. So Prairie View is up there in the mix. You got to admit, I joke around, but Prairie View A&M, Alabama State, and Bethune heavily dominated the softball first team. So congratulations to those teams.
I'm surprised you didn't start with track the way he wanted to make sure he got all that in there with Prairie. Charles,
hey, I'm looking at my watch like, whoa, we about to go into the fight.
I want to get all that in.
Oh, man. Oh,
that's right.
Charles, what news you got?
Well, I would stick with the softball thing, but I think Mike got it all. But I will say real quickly, kudos to Bowie State as they captured the CIAA softball crown with an 8-2 win over Claflin. So the Bowie State University Bulldog softball team is headed to the Division II postseason for the 4th time in school history after capturing the 2023 CIAA championship at RF&P Park, beating the defending CIAA champions of Claflin University by a score of 8-2. So kudos goes out to the Bowie State Bulldogs for clinching postseason berth.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
That was very good and efficient.
I'm gonna stick with you. I'm gonna stick with you, Charles, because
Charles
just had a little too much fun. So I'm gonna let you go back again, because if I give it back to Mike, we might not make it out of this first segment.
Hey, I'm getting it in.
There you go. Get it in. Well, kudos goes out to
He's like, man, I'm
Prairie
coming in
View.
hot. I figured he's going to make it quick. I'm trying to give him a little something. He's like, no, I'm finna go eat.
Yeah, I'm going in. Oh, the Prairie View women, they claimed back-to-back track and field titles. I'll tell you what, electric atmosphere out there this past weekend at PV for the SWAC track and field championships. But the Prairie View A&M Lady Panthers claimed the 2023 SWAC Women's Outdoor Track and Field Championship this past Saturday. The win capped off back-to-back league titles for the Prairie View A&M Women Outdoor Track and Field program. Prairie View, they tallied a league-leading 159 total points during the event, followed by Southern with 105, followed by Alabama State with 99, and they finished the meet in second and third place, respectively. And for his efforts, Prairie View interim head coach Eric Dixon, he was named the 2023 SWAC Women's Outdoor Track and Field Coach of the Year. Keeping with the track and field theme, Alabama State, they win the men's outdoor track and field title as Alabama State Hornets claim the 2023 SWAC Men's Outdoor Track and Field Championship this past Saturday. The win marked Alabama State's first league title in the SWAC Men's Outdoor Track and Field since the 2019 season. Alabama State, they tallied the league leading 143 points during the event, followed by Texas Southern with 120, and Jackson State rounds it out third with 116 points for their efforts. Alabama State head coach Richie Bean, he was named the 2023 SWAC Men's Outdoor Track and Field Coach of the Year. So kudos to Prairie View A&M women's outdoor team, as well as Alabama State. Tremendous atmosphere this past weekend. Packed bleachers for the SWAC Track and Field Championship, Doc.
Yeah, I saw that you were able to get out there and you're sharing a little bit of the highlights for folks to get a touch of it that didn't either get to get out there or see the streaming of the races. But competitive race on the men's side between Texas Southern, Jackson State, Alabama State, where Jackson State and Texas Southern were first and second, and Alabama State was literally laying in the weeds. They come up on the 200 race, I believe it was, and they finished first, second, and third, vaulted them in the first place, and they would not let it go and kind of pulled away to hold off of it. Obviously, that 4x4, both men's and women's at the end were exciting. As Prairie View on the women's side got a hold of it and just pulled away, won by more than 50 points in terms of how they dominated it, which was fascinating. But it did come to a great race at the end, which Alabama State was in second place between Prairie View and Alabama State, with Prairie View coming from behind and winning that race on the 4x4 to really drive those that were supporting the Panthers with being there at Prairie View into a tizzy to see the end of the race. So that was pretty exciting to kind of see how that went down.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it was funny, tremendous action on the track, but it was you had a few football coaches there. They were kind of taking a look at some of the track and field athletes, especially some of the sprinters, because I was talking with Coach Eddie Robinson. I kind of joked on him. I was like, that guy right there would be pretty good on the jet sweep, Coach. He was like, you're right. He would be. I might put a bug in his ear. So Coach Eric Dooley, he was out there from Southern. Eddie Robinson was out there. He had a few other coaches and ADs as well, but tremendous fun-filled atmosphere out there at the track and field championships.
Charles Gibson look hints and everything.
Charles, did he say it like that? Yes, he would.
He was like, you know what? Exactly. As a matter of fact, I do like it.
Yeah, exactly. Before we go to this first break, I want to get in this news. You talked about Bowie State winning the CIAA. Since then, the NCAA Division II teams have come up in terms of their seeding. Bowie State comes in at the number 8 seed, and they will face the number 1 seed in the recent East Stroudsburg in terms of what that looks like. And then you have Tuskegee. We talked about Thursday with Edward Waters winning the softball championship and was recognized by Black College Sports Network as the champions of the Division II, if you would, small college ranking for softball in terms of that message. But wanted to talk about the fact that Tuskegee earns the trip, back-to-back trips in terms of that, because Edward Waters is still transitioning from NIA to Division II, even though they're full members of the SIAC, so they can't represent the SIAC in the conference. So you have Tuskegee. Tuskegee came in also in the 8th seed, as they will play Auburn, Montgomery, and U of H in that Montgomery regional in terms of what takes place there. Coming out of the Sunshine State Conference members, seed in Tampa, and is paired with the matchup between Gulf Coast Conference members, number 4, U of H, and number 5 seed, Mississippi State College. So I wanted to get in there a little bit about what takes place there, give you some updates in terms of these other programs that are getting it done. Last thing I did want to get out of here, because I'll be heading to Montgomery tomorrow to look at the Black College World Series. That's the 2023 version. You have the Division II bracket, if you would, which will feature number 1 Albany State versus number 4 Edward Waters. In that NCAA Division II bracket, you have number 2 Savannah State versus number 3 Bullfield State. I got a chance because the Black College Sports Network broadcast the whole team down there, broadcast the SIAC tournament. They started last week with track and field. And then early in the week, they hosted the softball, which we told you about. Edward Waters getting it done against Tuskegee in that championship game. And then they also had the baseball tournament, which was really impactful in terms of what the Black College Sports Network was able to get done, broadcasting television that game. And I spent my weekend between those other things watching the game. Albany State had some classic games, particularly that game that came down between Albany State and Savannah State after both teams got in the loser bracket. Savannah State had a tremendous come-from-behind win. Late in that contest, went to extra innings. Marathon game with Savannah State getting it done over Albany State to put them out of the tournament. Savannah State, you could tell, just ran out of gas as they played for the championship on Sunday, as they were not able to get it done in terms of winning that. So Spring Hill was able to get it done, back-to-back champions in terms of what they were able to do. But kudos for the fight for Albany State, particularly Savannah State, in terms of what they were able to do. So we'll see what they can do in this National Black College Champion, as they will play number 3 Bluefield. Then you have the NIA bracket. We talked about Rust losing that tough game to Dillard in their championship down there after winning the regular season. They're the number 1 seed coming out of the NIA bracket. They will face number 4 Florida Memorial. Then you have a 2-3 matchup, which is Wiley, also out of the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, faces number 3 Payne. So it'll be fascinating to see how this shakes up in the NIA tournament. Now, be able to give some updates. We plan to do a live show there from the hotel on the facilities. We'll see how we do that Thursday night with y'all in the house. With that being said, let's go to our first break. We'll come back on the other side, get into some baseball talk. We'll start with the Eastern Division, which seems to be pretty much locked up with Alabama State as they are cruising now. And I have a question for these, and you all out there following us and listening. Is Alabama State the team to beat and going into the tournament, as they have just, over the last couple of weeks, really taken a control of the Eastern Division? Then we'll come back in the third segment and talk a little bit about the West Division, where maybe Grambling is doing the same. That matchup may be intriguing. We'll talk about that again on the other side. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this first break.
T. Madden and Associates is a sophisticated and experienced law firm located in your neighborhood. We're turning injury to cash.
T. Madden and Associates obtained almost $2 million for my injury. They turned my injury to cash. Now, we can't guarantee how much your injury is worth, but we've recovered millions for our clients.
Call T. Madden and Associates at 833-PAID-123. That's 833-PAID-123.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Lab. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Lab, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Let me get you a couple of updates in terms of what took place this past weekend. Couple of makeup games, couple of rain-ups pushed back, but a lot of scores were taking place. As we said, we'll focus on the Eastern Division first in terms of this segment and getting you kind of caught up what's taking place there. Before I do that, let me tell you about the independent programs. Independent programs, North Carolina A&T and the 4 in the Northeast Conference, formerly of the MEAC, Delaware State, Maryland, Eastern Shore, Coppin State, to talk about those programs are struggling in the Northeastern Conference. A&T, those teams are outside of the final 6 programs, if you would. So it's interesting. You have a little bit of Maryland, Eastern Shore trying to fight to see if they can maybe get in the Northeastern Conference. But we'll give you some updates to see how that plays out, to see if they can catch up on some scores, but they've struggled of late. So we'll focus a little more on the SWAC in terms of what took place there. A couple of these matchups and give you some updates. We have a little more time. We'll get in and give you those updates of what took place in Northeastern Conference, as well as the Colonial for A&T out of that Colonial and Maryland, Eastern Shore, Delaware State, as I said, in terms of what's taking place in the Northeastern Conference. With that being said, Arkansas Pine Bluff is going on a little bit of a run. They're playing some pretty good baseball, taking advantage of the schedule they did last week, come back, Alcorn State, see if they can put a squeeze and maybe push Southern, depending on what Southern against Prairie View. We'll give you that score as well. But again, I told you I want to focus on the East, so we're going to start with Bethune-Cookman. They had 4 games this weekend against Alabama A&M. One of those games was rained out from earlier, and they were able to get it in, so a doubleheader on Saturday. But they start on Friday. Bethune-Cookman gets a win over Alabama A&M 6-2 on that Friday matchup. Jackson State goes down to Tallahassee, gets one on Friday as they are moving after taking 2 out of 3 last week to see what they're doing. We say keep your eyes on this one. They get the first one, 8-7. FAMU is struggling in terms of what is taking place with them over the last couple of weekends. And so Friday, they could not get it right. Alabama State is just pounding Mississippi Valley. This is the game we said, can Valley get one? It didn't start out that way on Friday, 15-1 in terms of that matchup. Let's get into those are Saturday scores. Let me start it off, in terms of Friday, where you had Bethune-Cookman pounding Alabama A&M 11-0. FAMU starts out on Friday, I should have said, with a 10-5 win over Jackson State. And you had Alabama State that still pounded Valley, which will continue, as you just heard earlier, as they started out beating Valley 18-5. You saw the Saturday scores. Let's go back in here to Sunday and talk about how things finished up. Alabama State gets the sweep as they defeat Mississippi Valley State 14-1 for the Sunday matchup there. Jackson State is able to get 2 out of 3 as they win 2 straight games, defeating FAMU 10-7. And you have Bethune-Cookman defeating Alabama A&M 14-9 in terms of what took place in those matchups. So they were able to get quite a few games in there in terms of what took place in those matchups. So let me start with you, Charles. What do you think in terms of East Division? Your Jackson State Tigers, after some people wanted to put a little dirt on them, have gotten a little energy, a little light. Big win going on the road to Tallahassee, no matter what the FAMU rallies are dealing with. You got to worry about yourself. You take 2 out of 3 on the road in the SWAC. That's a good weekend. What do you think?
I might be one of them who threw dirt on the Jackson State baseball team, especially after the Alabama State sweep. But they've come back 2 weekends in a row. They took 2 or 3 from Bethune-Cookman, and now they followed it up with a big weekend against Florida A&M, where they take 2 or 3 against Rallies. And to some extent, you see the Jackson State bats. They've awakened. They're definitely been pounding the ball over the past couple of weeks. You take a look at Saturday, they put up 8 runs, and then they come back Sunday with another big day Sunday in terms of putting up 10 runs. But, I talked with AD Ashley Robinson over the weekend, and he said, in terms of looking at the baseball team, they've just dealt with a lot of injuries, back-to-back seasons where they've dealt with quite a few injuries, and just now they're starting to get a little bit more healthy, and we started to see that play out on the diamond now. Jackson State, they're number 3 in the SWAC at hitting. They're batting .309 thus far on the season.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Any of the other matchups stood out for you in terms of the Eastern Division?
I think everything else went according to plan. I mean, when you start taking a look at Alabama State in terms of what they did, we asked the question, could Valley get one? But Alabama State slammed the door shut on that completely. Honestly, taking a look at that East-West matchup with Alcorn, UAPB is an intriguing team to me. We saw they took 2 of 3, and I know we'll talk about the West, but they took 2 of 3 against Southern at one point in time this season. But really, this past weekend, they smashed Alcorn around, putting up 19 runs on Saturday. So, anytime you get those double-digit runs like that, it just kind of catches your eye. So that was a couple of things that happened over there in the SWAC East. Bethune-Cookman, they held serve versus Alabama A&M. Alabama A&M has really faded over the past few weeks. So in terms of, dumping dirt on a baseball team right now, it would probably be Alabama A&M.
I see what you're trying to do there. They do have that matchup on Wednesday where Jackson State travels to Pine Bluff, Arkansas to face the UAB Golden Line. So, trying to sneak a little bit of the East-West action in there to see about that game. You could have just went there. I understand. That's slide, though. I like that. Let me go back with you, Mike, in terms of the East Division, give you a little thought process in terms of what's taking place there. Alabama State 21-3. They've won 6 straight. Bethune-Cookman has righted the ship. It looks like it as they've won 3 straight. They're sitting in second now as they kind of took a dip back before the action this past weekend at 16-7. And behind them are FAMU A&M, the Rattlers, at 17-8. Jackson State, after this past weekend, looks like they're secured themselves in that 4th spot. We tried to make it interesting maybe with Valley as things are tightening up a little bit, but with the sweep of Alabama State over Valley and Jackson State able to get 2 out of 3, it looks like they're solidified themselves. They've won 2 straight. Your thoughts in terms of this East Division with these teams, Alabama and Alabama State here?
Well, I'll make it simple for you. It's Alabama State right now and everybody else. I remember a couple of weeks ago, we tried to, got to watch out for Valley. Valley going to get one. I think Valley's made it interesting. I'm surprised at what has happened with Alabama A&M. 3 weeks ago, they were in the middle of the East, and now look where they've fallen off. They've lost 8 straight. That's what's been surprising. Bethune is starting to do what we expect Bethune to do. However, I'll see what they do against FAMU coming up this week. The team that's surprising me, Jackson State, all of a sudden, they remember they can hit the ball. Yeah. All of a sudden, you look at their team batting average has spiked up. If this was an engineering curve with a process, we'd be like, what the heck's going on? One of the things that concerns me with Jackson State, even though it looks like they've gotten that number 4 spot, is team pitching. Their team ERA is 7.0. That's giving up too many runs. So even though they look good going to the finish, how will they fare going into the tournament? But as far as the East, it's Alabama State's to lose. We started the beginning of the year. Their pitching staff, we were wondering, man, what's going on? And all of a sudden, it just seems like they've leveled this team out. And then if you look at statistics, they have 3 of the top pitchers in the league, and it was Melendez, Obey, and a couple of others. That they're firing on all cylinders. So really, if you look at it, it's a race between Bethune and maybe even Jackson State to step up if their bats keep doing what they've been doing the last few games.
Good stuff. Mike, sticking with you. We always have this discussion with the Eastern Division, West Division, East-West, if you would. Is it Alabama State's to lose? Or are you hesitant to make that call this early in terms of the term?
I'll be bold enough and say right now, the way they're playing, they're the best team. I'm going based on well-roundedness. They're number 2 or 3 in the league in hitting and number 1 or 2 in pitching. They'd say we're balanced. I think if they continue to play like they're playing, they're on a 6-7 game winning streak. I really think it's their game to lose. And I say that's predicated on they appear to have the most balanced pitching staff. If they can go in with that pitching depth into the playoffs and maintain that solid batting performance, I think it's theirs to lose, and they don't lose the edge. So that's my perspective. I know that's a little bold, but I think it's Alabama State's to lose right now.
You know, as we do with the T's in the business, you know, we're going to talk about the West Division and Grambling. But Charles, question to you. Well, ask this now. Is it Alabama State's to lose, or do you have more to say about Grambling in the next segment?
No, I think Mike is hit the nail on the head in terms of Alabama State. But let me introduce to you Albany State in the SIAC. We just got finished watching that tournament. You talk about a team that was in control of everything, and here they are, not the SISC champions. Spring Hill took that. So I would caution before I jump out there on the Alabama State choo-choo train, if you will. Anything can happen in the tournament. Yeah.
That is true.
I think we'll be right back after this break as we're going to allow the choo-choo train to take place. We'll come back on the other side. Stiglitz will be right back after this second break.
Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Now, you can live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant-quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loot machine. Going around town, people trying to get down.
Vanilla smoked sea salt seasoning is for seafood. The tarragon and fennel bring out the natural sweetness in seafood. I also use it in rice dishes, on yams, asparagus, blueberry pancakes, and believe it or not, chocolate chip cookies. Vanilla smoked sea salt adds a salty and savory component to sweet dishes that create a symphony for the tongue.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Press the analytic. With your hip hop, if you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want to law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. As we get into it, let's just break down the Grambling State Western Division, and then we'll get into those matchups of what's taking place here. We'll start with the top as we did in the East Division. Grambling State 17-5. They're strutting the muscles a little bit. They have victories, big victories over the last 3 weeks, including taking 2 in the series against Texas Southern. The third game was washed out, so they've won 2 straight. Texas Southern, because of what Southern did to Prairie View, still remains in the second spot at 13-7, although they've lost 2 straight now. Prairie View is in third position, but they've lost 7 straight games. They've hit the skids 14-9, and they've actually allowed Southern to get back in the race at 12-9 with 4 straight wins. With that being said, we kind of buried Arkansas Pine Bluff, but they're in the mix to some degree at 9. and 15 in terms of what they've done on the win columns, but they're so far back on the loss columns, shouldn't really see a problem there. But credit to them, and I wanted to get this out. They've won 5 straight, including 2 against Southern, and then the sweep against Alcorn State that sits at the bottom at 3-22, lost 10 straight, that is struggling at this time. Let's get back in and give you some of these scores before I come back and ask your thoughts on what took place this weekend out of the SWAC in terms of these matchups and mix-ups that were going on. Starting with Friday, as we do, Grambling jumped out of the gate. Classic game between Grambling State and Texas Southern. I got over for this game at the ballpark, if you would. One big inning really did it in for Texas Southern. In the 5th inning, they scored 6, including a grand slam that ultimately became the difference in the game. Texas Southern fought back. Actually had the winning run at home plate. They had a run on first and second, but Grambling gets out of the ball game and wins 10-8 to get it done, to get a little bit of that momentum as they push forward. You have Prairie View that has the lead but can't hold on to them. They play Southern close, but they can't get over the hump, it seems like it. And they lose 3-2 on Friday in terms of what takes place there. And because of the rain out, you didn't have the other matchup. So those pushed to Saturday. As we get into the Saturday action, that's where you see Arkansas Pine Bluff flexing their muscle and playing some pretty good baseball at this time. They really beat up on Alcorn State 4-19, defeating them 19-2. They come back and win a closer game, but they get it done 6-3 over the Braves. Come back, Prairie View's game, we're actually going to play 4, but they were rained out in terms of the doubleheader they were going to try to get in on Saturday between Southern and Prairie View. At that time, you thought maybe it was a good omen for Prairie View, but we'll see what takes place on Sunday as they play 2 instead of just playing the 1 to try to get in 4 games. And you have Graham that actually pounded Texas Southern 20-9 in terms of that matchup on evening. Sunday comes, and the Texas Southern and Grambling game got rained out. It probably was a good thing maybe for Texas Southern, the way Grambling was getting a hold of them. But you are able to get in the 2 games in Baton Rouge. Southern takes it to Prairie View again, winning 11-4 in terms of that matchup. And they win the second game 11-3 in terms of what took place in those matchups, getting it done there. Arkansas Pine Bluff gets the sweep as well as Southern as they defeat Alcorn State 11-5 in terms of those matchups that are taking place. So tough matchups and a lot going on there in terms of what took place there. So let me stick with you, Mike, in terms of the Western Division. You heard the scores, you see the record. What were your biggest outcome and thoughts on this past weekend, particularly in the Western Division?
Takeaways, 2 or 3 takeaways. You know, you'd like to think that Southern is on the up and up based on what they did to Prairie View, but they lost 3 or 4 the week before to Pine Bluff. Not that Pine Bluff is the basement team, but their performance just hasn't dictated, and those were decisive games. And then, you know, you want to say Texas Southern, you look at where they are, they're number 2 or 3 in batting. However, their pitching is in the basement, and they've had a couple of opportunities to win games, and they just couldn't hold the lead. So is it pitching? Is it discipline? Lost opportunities? And, you know, you asked me in the East, you know, whose team is it? That's why, you know, I chose Alabama State, at least at this point, because the teams, you know, they're battling. It's about opportunities and arms and who can have the best set of arms at that moment. You know, right now you got Grambling sitting at the top, but they've had some key losses as well. I mean, you know, they've had some good wins. They beat Alcorn State. They beat Southern. They lost they had a good series against Prairie View. So they appear to be playing best right now at the end of the season. So I give the edge to Grambling. But with the West, it's about lost opportunities and the ability to hold leads, and that'll be key in the playoffs. You know, you're starting to see it manifest itself now, but I don't know if I would, you know, looking at statistics and past performance, I don't know if I would trust Prairie View looking at how they've done, lost 7 in a row. Southern's kind of up and down. So right now I give the edge to Grambling based on what I've seen, but that's not a confident vote of confidence, to be honest.
Who can you trust right now? Hey, that's a good question. Who can you trust right now? I mean, the only team out there that you can trust is Alabama State. But,
right.
That's the tough. I mean, I think your takeaways are dead on point. I mean, when you take a look at this series coming in on paper, I thought it was Texas Southern's to have. But you talk about Texas Southern with the number 2 pitching staff in the SWAC. They're right behind Alabama State in terms of team ERA. But Grambling pounded them this weekend. And, you know, when you talk about outslugging Texas Southern, they're the number 2 hitting team in the SWAC, and Grambling outslugged them this weekend. 10-8 win on Friday, and they come back with a 20-piece on Saturday.
That's bad practice.
That's bad practice. You talk about some missed opportunities. That's bungo time when you take a look at what they did Saturday. So, tough weekend for Texas Southern baseball.
It's amazing what Grambling is doing at the plate. I mean, they're putting up some runs and really pounding that baseball, you know. So they're a team to watch to see, can anybody cool down those bats? And you thought it was going to be Texas Southern, particularly on the road. They said, no, not so fast. Watch this. They got it done. Talking about the Western Division, obviously we had this discussion in the forum that we have on the Black College Sports Network when we discuss shows and keep everybody updated with the information out there. Rest in peace. Prayers go out to the family by the blue. But was not aware. You know, you think you had this information or what? Not aware that he spent a year at Southern University in terms of that before he took on his career and obviously won the 3 World Series with the Oakland A's. And you go back between the days I was growing up, life would have it that ultimately I'd follow in the footsteps of my father and grandfather in terms of becoming a member of Alpha Alpha fraternity. And I remember those Pittsburgh Steelers Pirates with the black and gold, black and yellow hats on. But the other team that was really excited for me, particularly in the American division, was the Oakland A's. Yeah. I remember when everybody was in these jerseys and you were particular before we really got into jerseys, it was the Nike and the different shoes you were going to wear in those baseball caps. And the Oakland A's were one of those baseball caps that you had to get on. Part of that was because Reggie Jackson, obviously, in terms of with the Astros and then with the Yankees becoming Mr. October was the team you follow. But Vita Blue, in terms of what he's able to do on the mound, along with Astros and some of those black pitchers that you had out of there. Quinn Boyd coming out of the Red Sox is another one that you kind of catch on because at the time you had some black pitchers that you could get excited about following, not so much these days. Obviously, my dad had me hooked on the Dodgers, and you could get Atlanta Braves, as Charles is a big fan of in terms of TBS. But that took me back, and to find out that connection with HBCUs is always fascinating to do that. So I really wanted to make sure we got that out of there, and it just kind of chimed in well. Looking at the Western Division. You want to add to that, Charles? Yeah,
quick story. I mean, my dad was, my love of baseball comes through my father. My father was a huge Vita Blue fan as well as Bob Gibson. Those were his guys. He had a righty and I had a lefty. And for me, growing up in Jackson with the AA team for New York Mets, Jackson Mets, MLB used to have a showcase that came around, and I had an opportunity to meet the great Willie Mays when he came to Jackson, as well as Vita Blue. So those are 2 memories that definitely stick out for me. But I joke with Tougaloo's coach, Earl Sanders, about this. My dad had those guys, but Earl Sanders was that for me for Jackson State. So I always throw that in there in terms of Earl Sanders' place in my life in terms of growing up, watching baseball, playing baseball. Those are some tremendous memories, and it all came flooding back with the passing this past week of Vita Blue.
Good stuff, good stuff. Mike, any final thoughts that you want to share on the Vita Blue before we go into this last break?
Yeah, similar to that, I kind of grew up, my folks were big Bob Gibson fans. Of course, I had the chance to see baseball quite a bit. And, I was heavy into baseball then. And my folks used to wake me up talking about Bob Gibson. You want to be Bob Gibson? You got to get up. You can't be Vita Blue. And I had a big poster of two Oakland A's, Vita Blue and later Ricky Henderson. So those were two of my favorites just growing up. You just remembered that name, Vita Blue. And, I saw the chat in the chat line. My parents always made sure that I knew which baseball players went to HBCUs. He was one of them, of course. So big fan, and it's just kind of surreal that he's gone at the age of 73.
Mm-hmm. Well stated. Great comments and important comments added by both of you all, just in terms of adding that humanistic component of it. Rest in peace, Vita Blue. With that, let's go into our last break. We'll come back on the other side, give you some BCSN updates. We'll give you the updates that they weren't able to do on Sunday night. We'll give you the rankings, if you would, from Black College Sports Network. Sports Wrap with Brian and AD. We're going to give you that input to make sure that we can get this on the record and get it out there as this was released. We'll see your thoughts on this on the other side as we get into chopping it up with these top 5 programs. Stick with me right back after this last break.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want to law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're going to get into these rankings. But before we did this, I want to give a shout out to our lab listeners out there. Silas Edward McMorris, PVU. Chuck Hunt is always in the building. G. Boom Holly. He believes maybe it's the rain that has gotten to the bats at Prairie View as they slow them down. Hey, yeah, we need something because obviously it hadn't slowed down the softball bats, but you just never know. With that being said, shout out to Silas because he also put that information out there about Vita Blue, as he says, didn't realize that as well. Emma Price from Daytona Beach, Theron Waters, Bethune-Cookman. Hello, everyone at HBCU Rand. Ricky Burton is in the house. Brandon King, Tennessee State, giving some love in here in terms of what's going on. LaShawn Harris, make sure he show you love. I got your message, LaShawn Harris. I will be getting in contact with you. So just give me a moment. We'll see if we can schedule that as you are going to provide some updates. I appreciate that. HBCU Heritage Center is in the house in terms of what's going on there. Willie Bolden is in here. G-Boom Holly says, baseball was my sport growing up, watching the White Sox. That's right. Always a good time. Holly was one of the first persons where I could convinced, and he loved to be out there. It wasn't hard to convince Holly, but we could go tailgate for the baseball games, man. Holly, we got to get back out there. It's been a weird year in terms of the rain and stuff like that, but yeah, kudos, man. We used to bring the pits on this, sneak behind the bat. Before they built the new part of the park and everything, they had a little batting cage around there, and I thought I was doing my thing. I parked the car snug against that little batting cage. Ball popped over just perfectly and hit. And this is when I had the Lexus. Hit the bottom of the windshield, sat right in there in the car window, man. I had to go spend my extra money and call insurance to get my window fixed. But that's a different story there. For those following us on YouTube, shout out to HBCU Band Talk. Edwin Moore, appreciate the support in terms of, and wanted to make sure, shout out there. We're trying to do a better job of making sure we mix it up between Facebook Live and YouTube for all those to get in there. Kudos to that. With that being said, let's get in there what you've been waiting for. We know that there's still some baseball to be played out here, but all of that for the NIA and NCAA Division II, what we call the mid-major division, is complete. So on that side, we can name a non-Division I, as Brian and AD likes to call it. Again, we refer to it as mid-major. We can give you an update and actually name a champion. So think of this. Have a couple of teams outside of the hunt. I will jump with those. Winston-Salem State finished the season at 21-14. Jarvis Christian at 26-24. You have Miles College at 19-21. Lane at 35-15. Albany State at 27-16. Some solid records when you talk about the mid-major division. Getting into the top five where it gets good. Stillman is in at number 5, 36-17, 15-12, 50.84 points, remaining at number 5 as they close out the season. Remember, this is a ranking purely in terms of the computers, but not in regards to the voters like we do in the fall for football, as well as the mid-major rankings we do for, if you would, basketball, men's and women's. With that, let's go back to number 4. We have Claflin at 32-12, 18-4. That's 52.62 points. They fall to close things out as they previously hold that 3 spot. They are down to number 4. At number 3, you have Tuskegee, 25-19, 18-6, 54-10. Previously ranked 2, so they slide a spot as well as they lose in the championship game. But Bowie State winning the CIAA moves them up 2 spots from 4 as they close out things. The Bulldogs there at 35-14, 60.62, finishing things in the 2 spot at number 1. Edward Waters, as they get it done at number 1, and therefore become the 2023 non-Division I national champion. The Edward Waters University Tigers, Lady Tigers down there in Florida, get it done in terms of winning the national championship. That's your rankings on that side of the thing at the Division I level. With that, Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of the ranking for mid-major division, if you would? Softball.
I was reading it and I was thinking baseball, but once I started looking at it and saw softball, because I immediately had some questions with it, but it's softball. I was
like, this cannot be baseball.
Softball is not dead. It's on point with softball.
I'm glad y'all realized that. I wondered what was going on in your face. I'm glad Roy in the background quickly pivot and make sure the poles got out there because you was all in your screen. Look at Twan.
I started pulling things. I'm like, wait.
And I'm like,
okay.
What?
All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I was like,
softball.
Okay.
Yes.
No doubt. So let me get in here in terms of giving you the top updates with the 5 teams in the baseball side. Maybe this will make a little more sense. I'm just going to go with the top 5 since the season not finished in terms of what's going on in that. So top 5. Miles at 22-24, number 5. At number 4, you have West Virginia State at 28-20, 44.8 points. They remain at number 4. And you'll get the refrain that things have stayed where they are. But number 3, Talladega is 28, 18-1, 48.2, They come in as the NIA program out of the top 5 programs, coming in the top 5. At number 2, Savannah State, 33-12, finishing at number 2 at this point in this week, 5-7, 49.35 points. And number 1, Albany State, 35-10, as they get it done at number 1. Because they needed to win the tournament, which means that Spring Hill will get the automatic bid for the SIAC. Albany State will not make the tournament, and you see that they have decided, along with Savannah State and Edward Waters, to participate in the Black College World Series for the Division II sides. Fascinating to see what that looks like. Let's get into it in terms of softball, if you would. Let's see what that looks like in terms of the top 5 programs. Should be fascinating because we have a week of the tournament. We'll talk a little bit more and give you more updates in terms of what that looks like. We told you in terms of those scores that were going on in the SWAC as they actually started today. Remember, the MEAC only takes the top 16, so they start playing in terms of what that looks like tomorrow, as well as track is started off. Top 3 games have been played. You have Alabama State that will be playing tonight. But with that being said, to say it again and just give you this update for those that tuned in terms of the opening game, you had Bethune-Cookman defeating Texas Southern 6-0, shutting them out. The second game featured Grambling and FAMU. Grambling gets it done, getting their first win in the tournament in some time. Kudos to them. Giving you an indication of maybe what's taking place in the West as they win 3-1 over FAMU. You go to the third matchup of the day. You have Prairie View with a close one over Jackson State, winning 2-1 in terms of that matchup. They jumped out 2-0. Jackson State was able to scratch that 0, get on the board, but could not do more than that. And then you have the late Alabama State game that is played for 6, but you've had little rainouts that have played some weather games, so we'll see how that goes, and we'll make sure you get those updates in terms of the show on Thursday. With that, in terms of the top 5, at number 5, Grambling State 30-20-1. At number 5, at number 4, you have Norfolk State out of the MEAC 24-21. They finished in the second spot as they will have the 2 seed abide in the MEAC tournament. While Grambling, we just heard the score they had as the SWAC takes the top 18, top 4 out of the East, top 4 out of the West. At number 3 comes in at Alabama State, 29-19, 58.89 points. At number 2, Morgan State that won the MEAC is sitting in at number 2 overall with 62.04 points. And number 1, 26-18, 67.73 points as they come into the tournament and do get that opening game win. As all those teams remain in the winning bracket, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. Let's close it out with the last poll of the day, getting into the Division I, a major division as we like to talk about it, baseball. I'm intrigued at what's taking place here in terms of those matchups. We'll talk about the top 5 programs. At number 5, Grambling State sits in at 22-22 at 500 after last couple of big weekends of baseball. Moving forward. At number 4, you have Florida A&M, 22-22. Still over them, 57-80. Interesting to see as FAMU is falling off. They dropped 2 spots, but they didn't do enough to have Grambling overtake them in terms of the loss. At number 3, Texas Southern, 27-17, 58.09. I'm going to have to ask Roy a little bit about, in terms of AD, a little bit about his computer rankings, as y'all like to ask me. But we'll see what y'all thoughts on there as Texas Southern moves up 3 spots, number 5, although they had a tough weekend against the Grambling team. And number 2, you have Bethune-Cookman sitting at 23-22. They rebounded with some big wins this past weekend, 58-10. They move up a spot from number 3. And number 1, not a lot of questions here, I'd imagine. Alabama State, 33-15, 71-57 and number 1. Let's just talk about the poll rankings for baseball. I don't think a lot of questions in terms of softball as we're up against it. But with that being said, go to you, Charles. What are your thoughts in terms of the baseball poll rankings this week?
I can't argue too much with the poll rankings, especially if you're going to start with Alabama State and work your way down. I think from that standpoint, I go back to the question I asked a few minutes earlier. Who can you trust going down the stretch in terms of baseball teams? Grambling State, huge weekend this past weekend against Texas Southern. Jackson State with a little momentum now that they've beaten the Florida teams 2 out of 3 the past couple of weekends. And you take a look at what's happening in the West, like I mentioned with Grambling. They took care of business against Texas Southern. Who can you trust going down the stretch? Any team that is not named Alabama State.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Mike, what are your thoughts in terms of the baseball poll? Look like Charles let AD off easy. What are your thoughts?
Well, let me just one thing on. I know you said baseball, but softball, it should be Alabama State and Prairie View. Morgan State, sorry, no, there's no way that Morgan. There's no way. Ain't no way. So their team bat average is 240. Alabama State softball team is 330, 320. Oh, come on. What are we looking at here? So what's the deal? So, yes, it should be Prairie View number 1, Alabama State 2. Morgan State's a couple of ways down. I know they finished number 1 in the MEAC. Going on baseball, I agree with what CB said. There's Alabama State. Who else can you trust? The only other problem is they ranked Texas Southern above Grambling State. I take it that they didn't look at these 2 losses that Texas Southern had.
Had to be prior to this weekend, yeah.
Yeah, I take it. So that's my assumption. But even with that, I would still rank. You could argue that Grambling State's, a hair above Texas Southern. But right now, I don't know who to trust in that West. Right now, for me, it's Alabama State. They're number 1, and then Bethune's playing okay. But I mean, who else you gonna go with? What other horse you gonna go with?
I love it when you talk about that. Depending on your travel schedule, Mike, I'll see if I can get you on Brian and AD with Sports Wrap on Sunday night. Fascinating. I'd like to see that mixture go in. Talk about this poll ranking. That should be fun. Go ahead, Charles.
And I'll do before we close out. I do want to mention this, and it is a bit on a somber note, but Grambling, Urban Walker II was a victim of the mass shooting this past weekend in Allen, Texas. I do want to mention that if you there is a GoFundMe page for Mr. Walker. But not only is he an alumni of Grambling, he's also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity.
He's also an Alpha Phi Alpha. Yep.
Yes, it is. I did want to make mention of that before we got out of here.
Good call.
Certainly appreciate that. Hospitalized, didn't lose his life, but still fighting for his health, as you imagine. It's just a tragedy for so many folks that we can't figure out a way to do a better job of protecting the people of this country. But it's more than what we can figure out on this show in terms of those that are in power, but certainly doesn't mean that we can't talk about and discuss our concerns of what's taking place. And even more side, making sure that we provide thoughts in terms of those involved and not just in terms of thoughts and prayers going beyond that. With that being said, the MEAC softball tournament, I did want to get this in. They're on ESPN Plus, the women's softball for the SWAC on the SWAC digital network. With that, that'll do it for us. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. No guest today, but we will have a guest in terms of Dr. Paul Bryant on Thursday. It's going to give us some updates in terms of the Magic City Classic. We talked about the business side of sports all the time on the show. Talked about some updates in terms of what's taking place in that Classic. We had Mo Carter to come in and provide some media perspective of what's taking place there and give us some updates in that. We're going to go straight to the source in terms of the AD, Dr. Paul Bryant. He'll come on the show. So check us out. We'll get that information out there as he will be on the show on Thursday. So we look forward to being able to give you some updates on that information. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday right here at 6 o'clock. I'll be on the road in Montgomery, give you some updates on what's taking place there. And we'll get these gentlemen, in terms of their schedule, getting them on board to bring you back and give you some hot takes. We'll give you some updates on what's taking place in SWAC as we're in the tournament side, and we're passing on some trophies. And remember, you also have the track and field tournament in the MEAC as well, so it'll be fascinating to see what kind of times we out of there. We saw Alabama State on the men's side, Prairie View on the women's side get it done, so we'll see what they do in the MEAC. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattaCavil. Again, that's DrKenyattaCavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube and Facebook. Like, subscribe. Make sure you download my JBN, my BCSN, as we continue to put in the work. Shout out to Black College Sports Network in terms of the work they did with the SIAC. They gave us a chance to see the visuals that we like to talk about when we bring you all the sports, particularly from the Division II side. So it's a great opportunity to make sure that you not only get to hear about it from us, read about it from HBCU Game Day, HBCU Sports, but you got to see it live right here on BCSN, the network, my JBN. So make sure you download to be able to keep up with the latest and greatest news. Follow Orange and Green, as they will give you the Strike Zone, as they will, OG, should say, as they will give you the updates on FAMU. Obviously, on Saturday, you'll get some insight from Carlos Brown on Southern. And lately, he's been getting some great information on the business side, if you would, in terms of getting a perspective from Coach Pettaway, former Hall of Fame basketball coach, if you would, at Alabama A&M. And then you also getting some insight from an athletic director perspective as well. With that being said, dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Make sure on Sunday you close things out of your week to get Brian and AD with Sports Wrap. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Mike?
Lecture.
Dismiss.